Thank you to Bellroy for sponsoring this episode. Today we learn how to make and use our own leather lacing. Stay tuned. Greetings adventurers and welcome to Skill Tree, where we learn how to do just about everything. So as I said at the beginning there, we are going to be learning how not only to make our own lacing out of leather, but also how to use it. This is not only a useful skill to have because it's just useful to know how to do these things, but also it is a great way to use up any like scrap pieces of leather that you don't have anything else to do with. Also, and this is just an aside, but I can't tell you the amount of times I've been in the middle of a project and I realized or I decided I needed some kind of cordage or whatever, and I didn't have any. Or I didn't have the right kind, like I had a colored one already that wouldn't match with what I was using or whatever. Using this process, you can make your own, you can dye it whatever color you want, and you always know you have it. All right, that's enough yammering about it. Let's just jump right into it. Now, as I said, this is a perfect way to use up a bunch of your scraps, and I just so happen to have just so many scraps. Like this is the handful I grabbed from the top of the pile. I have a lot of scrap leather. Now the main tool I'm gonna be using to make my lacing is this strap cutter right here. There are other tools specifically made for making lace, but I actually find that this works just as well for me. And I don't tend to like unitaskers. I like things that have like multiple uses. This is a strap cutter, but you can also use it for this too. As you can see, it has measurements on one side. It's adjustable, so you can make it kind of as wide as you want. And on one side, we got like a little razor blade that's inset in here that we can change out often. Now to actually make our lace, we want to start with as perfect a circle of leather as we can get. So I just use my wing divider on this piece of scrap right here, measuring it out so I can get as much leather out of this as possible. Really trying to cut down on the waste here. Once I get it to size, I use my wing dividers to trace out a perfect circle. It's hard to make out here, but trust me, it's pretty easy to see. With that all laid out, I just use my razor knife and carefully cut it out, again, making it as perfect as I can. You really want to try to make this as circular as possible because anywhere that has like little flat spots or divots or whatever, as you're pulling it through, it's gonna kind of wobble on you and it's just gonna get worse with time. You'll see, no matter what, it gets worse anyways, but give yourself the best start you can. Now, for the thickness of the lacing I'm trying to make, you can obviously make it, as thick as you want. Just don't go too thin or else it gets brittle and it breaks pretty easily. But I actually want this one to end up being a perfect square. That's because I just learned how to make round cordage and I really want to give it a shot. And I think the best way to start with that is by starting with a perfect square that we're then gonna kind of knock down all the corners for. You'll see as we go. But to get that perfect square, I just have a little piece of the leather that I just cut here and I use it as a spacer, butting the razor right up against it. Then I simply take this circle O leather and feed it through that space, trying to be careful to be as even again as possible and make this little tail come out. Once you have that tail out, it's pretty easy to just kind of grab onto it and pull. You don't want to go too fast, and kind of having it in this position where like that circle is on top weighing itself down tends to work best for me, mostly because it just kind of stays more straight that way. No matter how careful you are though, you'll see eventually it becomes potato shaped. Just kind of an oblong mess until it finally just breaks itself off. I have yet to be able to do that just all the way around and maintain a perfect circle. I'm sure there's a way to do it. Or again, if you use one of the tools that are made for doing this, I'm sure it'll be fine, but like, is what it is, I guess. Still, regardless, I end up with like 9 feet of this stuff, which is pretty great coming from a small piece of scrap like that. That's a lot of usable cordage right there. Okay, so that's the gist on just making regular cordage, right? Little square cordage. You can make it like nice flat stuff. Depending on what kind of leather you have, you can make all different types. But as I said, I want to try to make round cordage. And it turns out this is dead easy. For starters, we want to put this cordage into some water just to soften it up. This is exactly the same thing you do if you were trying to tool the leather, right? It makes it kind of a doughier consistency and makes it easier to shape. Once it's had a little bit of time to soak all the way through, I just dry it off on some paper towel here and set it aside to dry just a little bit more. Again, just like with tooling, you don't want this to be soaking wet, you just want it to be pliable. The other component that's gonna help you out here is some sort of a flat, uniform surface. I have a piece of countertop here, and actually like kitchen countertop works perfectly, but really anything that has a nice flat uniform surface should do you okay. Now making this round is actually stupid easy, like easier than I ever thought it would be. You just roll it on the surface. That's it. You can see already it starts to round off those corners a little bit. But to make this even easier, I had an idea. I just grabbed some of this vinyl right here and put it around this little scrap of 2x4 I have. Now I can use that to put more even pressure down as I roll this back and forth. And this actually does a really great job. Like, look at how even that is. Now you'll notice as I go back and forth, I'm keeping these strokes as even as possible, kind of the same distance forward as I go backwards. This is because as I was going, if you go too far in one direction, you'll actually start to get a spiral where the top grain of the leather and the bottom kind of shaggier part is. That'll start to twist around. You don't really want that. You want to be able to control where that side is so you can control the look of it. By kind of holding it in place and doing these even strokes back and forth as I kind of move down the piece of cordage here, I found that I was able to mitigate any of that spiraling and get a really nice even finish. Finally, I just slide the whole thing over my burnisher here, just to really kind of lay down any of those extra fibers. Though I think after I've dyed this and maybe oiled it or something, I might go back in with some burnishing compound to really lay it down and make it smooth. But I don't know what color I want this to be right now, and I like having the extra cordage and the option of making that decision. So I'm gonna leave it be for now. But still, look at all the cordage I was able to make out of scrap. Got some thick round stuff, some really thin round stuff, some nice flat stock here. That is awesome. I love that. I love that it's that easy to make. I can use up my scraps. I now have all those options. I think that's so cool. Okay, so now that we know how to make it, let's get into how to use it. Which might sound funny because like we've used cordage in here before. You wrap it around things if you want to, right? That's because you've been hanging around me too much and I'm super utilitarian. No, like actually it really has some pretty finishes you can get using cordage to like bind an edge to really kind of finish those edges off. There's a bunch of pretty ways you can use this stuff to add designs to your projects. Though I will say, in order to get like some nicer weaves in, it helps if you have a needle. And I do not have a needle for this. They sell some really cool ones that have like a hollow back to them with a thread in it, so you actually can thread it right onto the leather and then use it that way. Makes it super smooth. I will get some eventually. I just didn't have any during the filming of this. I didn't even think of it. But people have been using cordage for thousands of years, and most of the time it was with like a bone needle or something. So making a needle for this, it isn't actually that hard. For me to make mine, I actually just started with this little piece of metal I had here. I think it was like a piece of banding for something. Oh, real quick too, just to get it out of the way so you're not distracted, you will see I suddenly have a wound on my thumb. I was actually doing a different project when somebody called on my phone and I stopped paying attention for just a second while I was cutting. My thumb tip was hanging over the edge of my ruler. Damn near cut it straight off. Oof, it was bad. Luckily, I practiced what I preach and it was a damn sharp razor, so like I didn't even feel it when it happened. I just felt the tug of like, oh, that was dumb, I did a dumb thing. Anyways, they super glued it back on and now we're just waiting for my body to weave it back into the hole. But that's what that is, in case you're wondering. Pay attention while you're crafting. Don't lose your focus. That's how you get hurt. Anyways, back to the project. I went ahead and just cut about 3-inch piece of that metal off, and then took this round file to it to make these kind of half moon shapes on either side. I also used a file to kind of taper the end to form kind of a needle point. I don't want this to be too sharp, so I don't want it to stick into the leather, but just enough that I can kind of fish it through things. Basically, this is the shape here with a point at one end and 2 of those little depressed half moon sections at the other side. For just a little extra maneuverability, I went ahead and clamped this down and put just the smallest bend into the end of it, figuring that would make it easier to kind of fish it through things. To use this, all I do is line up my cordage as well as a bight of thread. Then I wrap the thread around that bight, fishing it through the loop at the end and pulling the cord on the other side. This just pulls the thread tight without there being any knots on the end. The thought here is that the thread now sinks into those little half moon shapes I have there on the side, which is gonna stop it from pulling back out. And actually this worked great, better than I thought it would. It holds super strongly. It's not as smooth as some of the other ones you can buy, but like it totally worked for me. Cool, now that we have that figured out, I have a couple of pieces of scrap leather here that I just punched a bunch of holes into, just so we can practice a couple of stitches here. The first of which is just gonna be a regular like whip stitch. Super fast, easy to use, and it's gonna look really great. First thing though is we need a way to anchor our cordage into here, and I don't want there to be like a knot hanging off to the side. So to do this, I just lay the non-needle end down, stab it with my razor blade, and give it a little bit of a pull, which is gonna give me a nice slit down to the middle, just big enough for my needle to fit through. Next, I send my needle and cordage through just 1/2 of the pieces here from the inside out, leaving that little tail hanging. This way, when I whip stitch it all the way around to the front again, I can send it through that hole, through the hole in my cordage, and then straight on through to the other side. Now when I tighten it up, it is anchored onto itself and it's nice and hidden inside of that seam. From here, it's just a simple whip stitch motion of coming around to the front, going through those holes, then coming right back around the front, going through the next holes, all the way down to the end. At the end, I just leave the last 2 passes nice and loose so that I can again send the needle up through the seam and pass it underneath those looser stitches. Then it's a simple matter to just go through and tighten everything back up by hand and cut away any excess cordage that's hanging out. After neatening it up with my awl, check that out. Not only does this look nice and clean and hold well, but it actually kind of works like a binder. Like this might be a cool way to, I don't know, bind a notebook or something, right? I've never used it that way, but it seems like you'd be able to. It actually opens really smoothly. All right, so that was a really straightforward, easy, kind of useful stitch. Now let's get into one that's a little bit more decorative. It's gonna look complicated at first, but I promise it's gonna be really easy. This is called the double loop stitch. For starters, you want your cordage to be at least 7 times the length of whatever you're trying to sew. You'll also notice my holes are closer together. For the loop stitch, I think I had it every like 1/2 inch apart. For this one, I have them centered every 1/4 inch apart. They're very close together. So to get this started, you just pass your cordage through so there's at least a couple inch long tail left over. This you wanna cross over the seam. Then you loop your cordage back around to the other side, crossing that tail, and send it through the next hole in the chain. You're gonna see that this has formed a little X over the seam. Next, you wanna bring your needle all the way back around over that X and send it through the very middle of that X. Then pull it through, making sure that everything's laying down nice and flat. Now you bring your cordage all the way back around and you send it through the next hole. Note, everything is coming from one side, right? So I'm sewing from right to left. Never will I end up sewing from left to right. It's always gonna be looping back around and everything that I do coming from right to left. So whether or not I'm going underneath those little X's or I'm going through the holes, it's always going only in that one direction. So after I bring that needle around and I send it back through the next set of holes, you're gonna see that that has now formed another X with the last stitch, which I again just send my needle underneath and then pull that snug. So you can see what's happening here. Every time I go underneath one of those X's, where the cordage crosses over is gonna form 1/2 of the next X down the chain. This way, when I loop the needle back over and go through the next set of holes, now I'm left with a full X there, where I can then send the needle underneath it again, and the whole process starts again from the beginning. I just continue this chain down the entire thing. I hope that makes sense. I try to explain it as clearly as I could. Now to finish it up, once I reach the very end, I just send it through my last set of holes, and then I fish my needle along the seam underneath some of those little decorative X's there, pulling it taut all the way through, and finally cutting away the excess. And bam, look at that. That looks pretty slick. Like, I've never done decorative cordage before, and this was one, really, really easy to do. But look at how pretty that is. That's nice. Now, there is no end to decorative braidings or some kind of like, I don't know, I think macrame is probably the wrong word, but kind of. Just really decorative stitching you can do on it that makes all these really unique patterns. If you like playing with this stuff, I highly recommend you just kind of either getting a book or looking at a site that goes over all the different stitching patterns and just kind of play with it. But anyways, yeah, now you have a cool technique. You're able to reuse any kind of waste material that you might have, and you can really fast up the look and quality of a thing. It's super cool. Speaking of not wasting materials and having great quality, I really wanted to thank today's sponsor, Bellroy. Bellroy is this awesome Australian-based carry brand that actually make most of their things out of recycled material. Now, the quality is great, right? Fantastic quality. But what I really love is like the thoughtfulness put into the way it's made. Like, let me explain. So one of the things we got is this transit carry-on luggage. So yeah, it looks really good, right? It's nice carry-on luggage. It's super light, which is great because we're always like struggling with weight when we pack to go to Germany to Conquest or whatever. But check out the cool features, like starting with this little TSA lock here that locks the zippers in place, which I thought was just a neat design anyways. When you open it up, it has these little removable packing cells, which not only help organize your stuff inside the bag, but because they're removable, once you get into your hotel room, you can just kind of take them out, throw them into your hotel drawers or whatever, and everything's just organized. I love that. I think that's great. They also took the time to make sure the wheels were super quiet, that the little, what is it, the extendable handrail works well. And the best part is all of it is like changeable. Like you can change it as it starts to break down over time or whatever. They've made it easy for you to be able to take those pieces off and then just add new ones. So you can replace the wheels, you can replace the handles, you can replace all the locks and stuff. That is a great idea. Anyways, I really like the brand. I'll stop gushing about it. But if you want to give it a look, just check out my link in the description below for a 10% discount. I'm not gonna lie, I might use my own code to get their little wallet thing too. They got some cool stuff on the site. Go check it out. Anyways, I hope you liked what we covered here today. It was basic, but I think it was a lot of fun. If you did like it, give me some of that like it love, and don't forget to subscribe so you know when I release new content. In the meantime, though, keep leveling up, you. You've made it to the end screen. YouTube loves it when you do that, and it's a fantastic way to support this channel. Another fantastic way to support this channel is by joining these people's noble ranks. These are our Patreon members, and we can't do any of this without them. A massive thank you to our Grandmaster tier Patreon members, Froggy and TD Designs and Sundry. It is amazing and humbling that you guys support us in the way you do, and we really can't tell you how much we appreciate it. If any of you like what we do here and want to support us, consider joining our Patreon, link in the description below. Otherwise, you can check out one of these videos here that YouTube thinks you'd like, and that helps out a lot too. All right, weirdly enough, I'm actually gonna go play with my luggage. I do like that product, it's pretty cool, so yeah.